Picture this. You're walking through a forest, and suddenly you realize that every tree, every flower, every blade of grass around you is having conversations that you can't hear. They're gossiping about the weather, warning each other about danger, even calling for help when they're under attack. This isn't science fiction. This is the hidden reality happening right beneath our noses. And today we're going to decode the secret language that plants have been speaking for millions of years. What if I told you that plants have their own version of the internet, a massive underground network that allows them to share information faster than you can send a text message? What if I told you that when a caterpillar takes its first bite of a leaf, that plant immediately sends out a chemical SOS signal that can travel for miles? And what if I told you that some plants can actually count, remember past events, and make decisions based on what they've learned? Welcome back to another mind-bending journey into the world of science. I'm your sleepy scientist, and today we're diving deep into one of nature's most incredible discoveries, how plants communicate through electrical signals and chemical messages. By the end of this video, you'll never look at your garden the same way again. Let's start with something that will completely change how you think about plant intelligence. When you touch a mimosa plant, also known as the sensitive plant, its leaves fold up instantly. But here's what's truly remarkable. This isn't just a simple mechanical response. The plant is actually sending electrical signals through its tissues at speeds of up to 10 centimeters per second. That's right. Plants have their own version of a nervous system. These electrical signals work remarkably similar to the way neurons fire in our brains. When a stimulus occurs, like touch or damage, specialized cells in the plant generate electrical impulses that travel through the plant's vascular system. It's like the plant has its own internal telegraph system, sending messages from leaf to root and back again. But electrical communication is just the tip of the iceberg. The real magic happens in the world of chemical messaging, and this is where things get absolutely fascinating. Plants produce thousands of different volatile organic compounds, basically chemical words in their vocabulary, and they use these to communicate complex information to other plants. Here's where it gets really wild. When a plant is being attacked by herbivores, it doesn't just sit there and take it. Within minutes of being munched on, the plant starts producing and releasing specific chemical signals into the air. These airborne messages can travel surprisingly far, sometimes over a mile, carrying detailed information about the type of threat and the severity of the attack. But here's the incredible part. Neighboring plants can actually understand these chemical messages. When they detect these warning signals in the air, they immediately begin ramping up their own defense systems. They start producing toxic compounds, bitter-tasting chemicals, or even substances that make their leaves tougher to chew. It's like having a neighborhood watch system, but for plants. This chemical communication isn't random or accidental. Plants can distinguish between different types of threats and adjust their chemical messages accordingly. The signal they send when being attacked by a specific type of caterpillar is different from the one they send when being attacked by aphids or other insects. They're not just screaming for help, they're providing detailed intelligence reports. Now, let's talk about something that sounds straight out of a fantasy novel, the Woodwide Web. Beneath the forest floor lies one of nature's most sophisticated communication networks, and it's been operating for hundreds of millions of years. This underground internet is facilitated by mycorrhizal fungi, microscopic organisms that form symbiotic relationships with plant roots. These fungal networks create physical connections between different plants, sometimes spanning enormous distances. Through these connections, plants can share not just information, but actual resources. A large tree might send nutrients to smaller saplings struggling in its shadow. Plants can warn their neighbors about approaching threats through chemical signals that travel through these fungal highways. The complexity of this underground network is staggering. In a single handful of forest soil, there can be miles of fungal threads connecting dozens of different plant species. These networks show properties remarkably similar to neural networks in brains, with some fungi acting like synapses, facilitating communication between different plants. But communication through the Woodwide Web isn't just about sharing resources and warnings. Plants also use these networks to share information about environmental conditions, seasonal changes, and even genetic material. It's like having access to a vast library of ecological knowledge that's been accumulated over centuries. Let's dive deeper into the sophistication of plant chemical communication. Plants don't just have one chemical language, they have multiple dialects for different situations. There are chemical signals for attracting beneficial insects, warning about predators, coordinating with symbiotic partners, and even engaging in chemical warfare with competing plants. Some plants release chemicals that inhibit the growth of nearby competitors. Black walnut trees, for example, produce a compound called juglone that prevents many other plants from growing near them. It's like claiming territory through chemical means, ensuring they have access to the resources they need to thrive. On the flip side, plants also use chemical signals to attract beneficial partners. When certain plants are attacked by herbivorous insects, they release chemicals that attract predatory insects. It's like calling in the cavalry, using chemical messages to recruit bodyguards that will eliminate the threat. The timing and specificity of these chemical messages is remarkable. Plants can adjust their chemical communication based on the time of day, the season, their age, and their current health status. Young plants might send different signals than mature ones, and stressed plants have their own unique chemical vocabulary. Here's something that will blow your mind. Plants can actually learn and remember through their chemical communication systems. When a plant experiences a threat and successfully defends against it, it can remember that experience and respond more quickly to similar threats in the future. This biological memory is stored in the plant's chemical systems and can even be passed on to the next generation. Recent research has shown that plants can distinguish between different types of stress and adjust their chemical responses accordingly. Drought stress produces different chemical signals than insect attack, which produces different signals than disease pressure. Plants are essentially running sophisticated diagnostic systems, constantly monitoring their environment and adjusting their chemical communication accordingly. The electrical component of plant communication is equally fascinating and much more complex than scientists initially realized. Plants generate electrical signals in response to various stimuli, including light, touch, temperature changes, and chemical triggers. These electrical impulses can travel throughout the plant, coordinating responses across different tissues and organs. What's particularly intriguing is that plants seem to use different electrical frequencies for different types of information. Just like radio stations broadcast on different frequencies, plants appear to use distinct electrical patterns to communicate different messages. Some frequencies might be used for routine housekeeping information, while others are reserved for emergency communications. The speed of electrical communication in plants varies dramatically depending on the species and the type of message being transmitted. Some signals travel slowly, taking hours to reach all parts of the plant, while others zip through the plant's tissues in seconds. It's like having both email and instant messaging systems operating simultaneously. Scientists have discovered that electrical signals in plants can trigger cascades of chemical responses. An electrical impulse might start in a leaf that's been damaged, travel down to the roots, and trigger the release of chemical signals that alert neighboring plants to the threat. It's a remarkably sophisticated multi-layered communication system. Here's where things get really mind-bending. Some plants appear to use electrical signals to coordinate group behaviors. When researchers studied how plants respond to environmental changes, they found evidence of synchronized electrical activity across multiple plants in the same area. It's as if plants can achieve a form of collective intelligence through their electrical communication networks. The implications of plant electrical communication extend far beyond basic survival responses. Plants use electrical signals to coordinate complex developmental processes, timing the opening of flowers, the dropping of seeds, and the seasonal changes in their metabolism. These electrical rhythms help plants synchronize their activities with environmental cycles. Let's explore how plants use their communication systems for more than just survival. Plants engage in what can only be described as social behaviors through their chemical and electrical messaging. They can recognize their relatives and treat them preferentially, sharing more resources with genetically related plants than with strangers. This kin recognition happens through chemical signatures. Plants can analyze the chemical profiles of their neighbors and determine genetic relatedness. When they identify relatives, they adjust their behavior accordingly, sometimes reducing competitive behaviors and increasing cooperative ones. It's like having a family reunion in the forest, where everyone looks out for their cousins. Plants also engage in complex negotiation behaviors through their communication systems. When resources are scarce, plants can negotiate sharing arrangements through chemical signals. They might agree to split territory, share access to water sources, or coordinate their growth patterns to minimize competition. The seasonal coordination of plant communities is another remarkable aspect of plant communication. Plants use chemical and electrical signals to synchronize their reproductive cycles, ensuring that pollination happens efficiently and that seeds are dispersed at optimal times. This coordination can happen across entire ecosystems, with plants timing their activities based on signals from their neighbors. Some of the most sophisticated plant communication happens in response to climate changes. Plants can detect subtle shifts in temperature, humidity, and light patterns, and they share this information with their neighbors through chemical signals. This allows plant communities to prepare collectively for changing conditions, adjusting their metabolism and growth patterns in advance. The role of plant communication in ecosystem health is profound. When keystone species in an ecosystem are threatened, they can send out chemical distress signals that alert the entire community. This early warning system allows ecosystems to begin adaptive responses before critical damage occurs. Plant communication also plays a crucial role in soil health management. Plants coordinate with soil microorganisms through chemical signals, managing nutrient cycling and maintaining soil structure. When soil conditions change, plants can adjust their chemical communications to recruit different types of beneficial microbes. Here's something that might change how you think about agriculture. Plants in agricultural settings are often stressed not just by pests and diseases, but by the lack of communication opportunities. In monoculture farms, plants are surrounded by genetically identical neighbors, which limits the diversity of chemical communications they can engage in. Traditional polyculture farming systems, where multiple species are grown together, create rich communication networks that benefit all the plants involved. Different species contribute different chemical signals to the community conversation, creating more resilient and productive growing systems. The potential applications of understanding plant communication are enormous. Scientists are working on developing technologies that can translate plant chemical signals, essentially creating plant-to-human communication devices. Imagine being able to understand exactly what your houseplants need by reading their chemical messages. Agricultural applications could revolutionize farming practices. By understanding how plants communicate about stress, disease, and resource needs, farmers could develop more precise and sustainable growing methods. Instead of applying pesticides and fertilizers on predetermined schedules, treatments could be applied based on what the plants are actually communicating about their needs. Environmental monitoring is another promising application. Plants are incredibly sensitive to changes in their environment, and their chemical communications could serve as early warning systems for pollution, climate change impacts, and ecosystem health problems. Networks of plants could essentially serve as biological sensor arrays, providing real-time environmental data. Urban planning could also benefit from understanding plant communication. By designing green spaces that facilitate plant communication networks, cities could create more resilient and healthy ecosystems. Green corridors that allow chemical and fungal communications to flow freely could connect urban green spaces into larger, more functional ecological networks. The therapeutic applications of plant communication research are just beginning to be explored. Some researchers are investigating whether exposure to plant chemical communications might have beneficial effects on human health and well-being. The complexity and sophistication of plant chemical signals might interact with our own biological systems in ways we're only beginning to understand. As we wrap up this incredible journey into the secret language of plants, let's take a moment to appreciate the profound implications of what we've discovered. The natural world around us is far more interconnected and intelligent than most people realize. Every forest, every garden, every natural area is buzzing with conversations, negotiations, warnings, and cooperative behaviors that happen at a level we're only beginning to comprehend. The next time you walk through a garden or forest, remember that you're moving through a complex social network where every plant is both talking and listening. They're sharing resources, warning about dangers, coordinating their activities, and looking out for their relatives. The silence we perceive is actually filled with chemical conversations and electrical signals carrying information vital to the survival and success of these remarkable communities. This research is revolutionizing our understanding of plant intelligence and challenging fundamental assumptions about consciousness, communication, and community in the natural world. Plants aren't passive organisms simply responding to their environment. They're active participants in complex ecological networks, constantly communicating and making decisions based on the information they receive. The study of plant communication is still in its early stages, and new discoveries are being made constantly. As our technology improves and our understanding deepens, we're likely to discover even more sophisticated forms of plant communication that we can't even imagine yet. What amazes me most about plant communication is how it demonstrates that intelligence and communication can take forms completely different from our own. yet still be incredibly sophisticated and effective. Plants have developed communication systems that have allowed them to thrive for hundreds of millions of years, creating the foundation for all life on Earth. Understanding plant communication also gives us new perspectives on our own role in natural ecosystems. We're not separate from these communication networks. We're participants in them, whether we realize it or not. Our activities affect the chemical and electrical conversations happening around us, and those conversations, in turn, affect the health and stability of the ecosystems we depend on. So the next time you are tempted to think of plants as silent, passive organisms, remember the incredible secret language they've been speaking all along. Remember the underground internet connecting forest communities, the chemical warning systems protecting plant neighborhoods, and the electrical signals coordinating responses across entire ecosystems. The world of plant communication shows us that life on Earth is far more interconnected, intelligent, and cooperative than we ever imagined. And that's a reminder that science continues to reveal wonders that surpass even our wildest imagination, hidden in plain sight all around us.